I learned about Shombit first time from Azim Premji, and you had poked him, right? And I was at that time the chairman of Wipro Sales and Marketing Council, and Premji told me that we have to rebrand Wipro. Had no idea about branding. He says, here comes Shombit. And my job was a difficult job of trying to translate Shombit's French, Bengali, English into a language that, some of the post-50s men, it was an all-men council. And I'll tell you something very interesting that happened. First, let me tell you the thing in lighter vein, and then I'll tell you the serious stuff, which has got overflow into this book. On the lighter vein, Shombit talked about brand research for the first time. And he talked about stuff like PNP research at that time. And Shombit was not there just to recommend a brand or brand path and take his fee and go. He was so passionate that he wanted it to be implemented. He talked about execution, right? So he wanted to be executed. And he wanted a decision there and there. And Premji looked around his reporters and they were shocked and silenced, and they didn't know how to react and were certainly not buying in because the ideas were too radical. So Premji also kept quiet. So Shombit sensed that it's not going anywhere. So Shombit really got mad and said, Azim, if you don't do this, I'm going to strip right here. Premji said, no, please don't do it. So that's Shombit for you. During that course, something very interesting happened. He called me aside and he told me that during his research of why Indian corporations didn't understand the essence of brand, and they were very ill-equipped to handle the opening up of the economy. So at that time, he was going around evangelizing the whole idea of brand. And during that, he would always proceed by research, to talk to his potential clients and existing clients to research. And while researching Godrej, which was one of his clients, he was shocked to find that every Godrej refrigerator was sent with a lock and a key. And to Shombit, who had gone away from India for a long time, didn't understand what was going on in India, it was really shocking because, why on earth should a refrigerator have a lock and key? And then for a moment he thought that like a guy with a hammer, thinks that the whole world is a nail. So because Godrej prides itself being a lock company, they would put a lock in every damn thing that will come in the way. But then came this sad realization that 165-liter Godrej refrigerator, primary customer was, I'm sorry to say, it's not to be sexist, but middle-class housewife. And our biggest concern is that the maidservant will steal milk and drink it. So Godrej, in its infinite wisdom, to fulfill that unstated desire, puts a lock and a key. And it also becomes a matter of contention, a power struggle between the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. Now, the interesting thing is, at that time itself, and Shombit comes from a proletarian background, first of all in his refugee colony days, then living in socialist France and looking at the entire principle of human dignity at all levels, not just for white collar, but across different levels of society. To him, it was a matter of great pain, and he said, why isn't that when the maid arrives at home, that she is the first person to whom the housewife warms up a glass of milk and gives her so that she, with full strength and vigor, is then able to take the burden of the daily work. Why can't it be like that, rather than put a lock and a key on the refrigerator? So if we look at the progression of his current book, it's quite interesting and quite phenomenal that he has evolved as a thinker and a writer. I can talk to you about how his mind works. The reason for that is I've seriously looked at Shombit, and I've been flummoxed, and I've been surprised, and I've been shocked sometimes. I try to decode what goes on inside his head. Why does this man think like this and others don't think like this? Which brings us to the idea of how thoughts happen to begin with. And if you look at Shomit's brain and your brain and my brain, the common thing is at the base of the brain is the primitive brain, which is the amygdala. Now this brain is the intuitive brain, it's the primordial brain, it is the brain that does not see in alphanumeric characters. Basically interprets sights and sounds and movement and color. Now that's why his clothes are like that. It is the primitive brain because you are factory fitted with this brain. You are shipped to this world with this brain, and this brain is fully formed in the mother's womb. And then above that is the neocortical brain, which keeps growing till about you're 8. So this is this part of the brain, right? And the neocortical brain has two sides, the left brain and the right brain. The left brain being logical, okay, if then else, and the right brain sees patterns. If you look at Shomit's whole approach, his thought process, and our thought process is, when we look at something, we engage one part of the brain at one time. Okay? So some people will get triggered by the emotive brain, which is the primitive brain. So the moment you see that nail on that chair, you don't want to sit on that chair. You want to run away from that chair. So that's the primitive brain at work. Some people will rationalize, they may be in the front seat, they'll say, Shomit is not going to embarrass us by asking us to sit there, so it's safe to be on the front seat. So that's the neocortical brain thinking. Now on the left-hand side, you have obviously the logical, and on the right-hand side, the relational brain. Now, we engage parts of it. The way that I have seen Shomit working is entire brain lights up, okay, at the same time. And that is something that you will see when you read this book. Once you do that, then there's a difficulty in that. The difficulty is it is jumbled information to the untrained mind sometimes. So that's why some people struggle trying to figure out what is it that Shomit is trying to say here. But once you understand how his brain works, that he is simultaneously left brain, right brain, simultaneously neocortical and primitive. Okay, I actually call him the caveman. He's a caveman exploring the rainforest. So you see his clothes, the rainforest. And he thinks and writes and talks the same way. There's no need for any sophistication in his thinking because he's continuously looking at the thing as it is. He's not trying to sugarcoat something, or he's not trying to say something which sounds good. Okay? So he will say it just as it comes, just as getting processed in his mind. So I think that's a very fascinating, powerful thing. Because of late what's happening is brand which was considered to be witchcraft is becoming more scientific. And people are understanding how the human mind works, which is basically a function of 4 kinds of people sitting together around the same table. One is the neuroscientist, one is a psychologist, the third is the geneticist, and the fourth is this whole imaging technology. Now, with this, I think people like Shomit will gain significant currency in the coming years. The other thing very significant about this book is he's trying desperately to draw attention to the fact that India will not succeed unless people who are neither blue collar nor white collar, that in between category, they become world class. Okay, so what happens if you walk into an electronic showroom today, the person who's trying to present the product doesn't even know what goes inside the product. It's a social failure of the same kind that had a lock and a key on a refrigerator, where the society is not questioning why the maid servant shouldn't have milk. Okay. And it's an urgent call for policymakers, for thinkers, for industrialists to actually pay attention to that human capital. Okay. And I'll tell you something very interesting, why it is so critical. A colleague used to live in US and come to Bangalore and get his suits stitched here because you can't afford to get bespoke tailoring anywhere in the world. And he used to go to, I'll not name the name of the tailoring shop on MG Road, but he would go get 6 pairs done and go back proudly. And I used to buy my suits in Macy's, which were, not the best fitting suits, but they did the job. Now this guy would proudly go back and then, you know, he would complain about something which is just not right with the suit. So either it's too tight or, you know, it gets frayed or it just doesn't fall the right way. And then one day he came and said, I figured it out why it's not working. And what he said is that the guy who stitches the suit in India has never worn one. So I think this entire book is a call to action for the salesman in the electronic shop, the guy who will do bespoke tailoring, okay, to the farmer's picture that he showed, to the technician, to the repairman, and saying that we have to bring them to a level of training and understanding and capacity building, which then will make us a relevant society.